A simple act of reading to a child would not only change his life, but transform a billionaire's world and a librarian's dream forever. Every Wednesday morning, the town library felt different from any other place. The smell of old books mixed with the sweet scent of polished wood. Sunlight came in through the tall windows and made golden shapes on the floor. It was a peaceful place, where stories lived quietly on the shelves, waiting for someone to open them. The town was small, and most people who came to the library were regular visitors. Some came to read newspapers, some to borrow novels, and some just to find silence. But on Wednesday mornings, the most special visitor was a little boy named Ethan Wallace. Ethan was 7 years old, had a bright smile that could melt any heart. He sat in a small wheelchair, decorated with stickers of dragons and stars. His body was weak because of a rare illness, but his imagination was strong. He loved listening to stories more than anything else in the world. His favorite person in the library was Emma Brooks, the librarian who read to him every week. She was a kind woman in her early 30s, with warm eyes and a gentle voice that made every story sound magical. Emma loved her job, even though it didn't pay much. She believed books could do more than entertain, they could heal, comfort, and teach people to dream. Every time she read to Ethan, she forgot about everything else. She didn't see a boy with a disability. She saw a child full of wonder and courage. The way he leaned forward when she read, the way his eyes shined when a story got exciting, it made her feel that what she did truly mattered. Ethan was usually brought to the library by a driver in a black car. The man always waited outside while Ethan spent an hour listening to stories. Everyone in town knew that Ethan's father was Daniel Wallace, a billionaire businessman who owned one of the biggest tech companies in the country. People whispered about him, saying he was too busy making money to spend time with his son. But Emma never judged. She didn't care about gossip or wealth. She only cared about making Ethan happy. The first time Emma met Ethan, she noticed how quiet he was. He didn't speak much, and sometimes struggled to form words. But when she started reading, something changed. His face lit up, and he followed every word with complete attention. From that day on, she decided to make Wednesdays their special story time. She would pick out books with bright pictures, soft adventures, and strong heroes because she wanted Ethan to see himself in those stories. One morning, Emma chose a book called The Dragon Who Couldn't Fly. It was about a small dragon who thought he was too weak to be like the others. But in the end, he discovered his own special power. As she read, Ethan's eyes widened. He laughed when the dragon tried to flap its tiny wings and failed. He clapped when the dragon finally found its courage. Emma smiled, watching him enjoy every word. After the story, she closed the book and asked softly, "Did you like it, Ethan?" He nodded shyly. His voice came out weak, but full of joy. "I like the dragon. He's brave." His heart melted. "You're brave too," she said. Ethan grinned, and for a moment, his whole face lit up with happiness. While Ethan listened to stories, other visitors sometimes watched quietly. Some were touched by Emma's patience. Others felt pity for the little boy. But Emma never wanted pity for him. She wanted people to see what she saw, a child full of hope and light. After story time, Emma would help Ethan choose a new book to take home. She made sure every story had a message of strength, kindness, or imagination. Sometimes she slipped a handwritten note inside the book. Small encouragement like "keep dreaming," "little hero," or "every story needs a brave heart." Ethan's driver would always thank her politely before pushing the wheelchair outside. Then the car would drive away, leaving behind the quiet echo of laughter for Emma. Those mornings became the highlight of her week. Her life outside the library was simple and lonely. She lived in a small apartment with a cat named Willow and spent most evenings reading or organizing books for the next day. But on Wednesdays, she felt a sense of purpose. She prepared every story as if it were a gift. She practiced different voices for characters and even drew little illustrations on sticky notes to make Ethan laugh. What Emma didn't know was that she was slowly becoming a part of Ethan's world in a much bigger way. At home, he talked about her constantly, about Miss Emma, who read the best stories, who laughed softly, who never treated him differently. His father, Daniel, would listen, but always from a distance. Daniel loved his son deeply, but he struggled to connect with him. Work had taken over his life, and guilt had built a wall between them. But inside the library, none of that mattered. To Emma, Ethan was not the son of a billionaire. He was just a little boy who loved dragons and heroes. To Ethan, Emma was not just a librarian. She was a friend who saw him, not his wheelchair. And though Daniel didn't know it yet, those quiet mornings in the library would soon change all their lives. Each time Emma read, the bond between her and Ethan grew stronger. He began to laugh more, ask questions, and even try to read a few words himself. Emma celebrated every small step as if it were a great victory. When he pronounced a difficult word or pointed to a picture proudly, she would clap and say, "You did it." That sparkle in his eyes always reminded her why she loved what she did. Outside, the seasons changed. The summer heat faded, and autumn leaves began to fall, painting the library courtyard in orange and red. Yet every Wednesday, the same routine continued, the soft turn of pages, the quiet laughter, and the bond between a librarian and a little boy who believed in stories. The town had grown used to seeing the black car outside the library. Nobody had ever seen Daniel Wallace himself, and some said he would never come. But fate had its own plan. The quiet magic that happened inside those library walls was about to reach him too. And when it did, nothing would be the same again. For now, though, Emma was simply happy to be doing what she loved. She had no idea that someone was watching from afar, that her kindness, her gentle voice, and her belief in stories would soon touch not just a child's heart, but also the heart of a man who had forgotten how to feel. The story had only just begun. It was a rainy Wednesday morning. The sky was covered with thick gray clouds, and the sound of raindrops tapping against the library windows made everything feel calm and soft. Inside, the warm light from the lamps made the little room glow. Emma Brooks was already setting up the story corner, arranging the colorful cushions in a small circle and placing a pile of picture books beside her chair. She looked out the window and smiled to herself, wondering if Ethan would come today despite the rain. He never liked to miss story time. At exactly 10 o'clock, the familiar black car stopped outside. The driver opened the door, and Ethan rolled in, wrapped in a blue raincoat. His cheeks were pink from the cold, and his small hands clutched a toy dragon. "Good morning, Ethan," Emma said cheerfully. "I was worried the rain might keep you away." Ethan smiled shyly. "Rain is okay," he said softly. "Dragons like rain." Emma laughed and nodded. "Then we'll read a story about dragons today." What Emma didn't notice was that this time, Ethan wasn't alone. A tall man stepped in behind him, holding an umbrella. His suit was slightly wet, and his hair had a few silver strands at the temples. He stood quietly at the back of the room, watching. It was Daniel Wallace, Ethan's father. For the first time, he decided to see for himself what his son loved so much about the library. Daniel had spent years buried in his company, surrounded by meetings, deadlines, and numbers. He had built an empire, but had slowly lost touch with simple joys. Since his wife passed away, everything had changed. His world became cold, efficient, and quiet. He provided his son with the best doctors, tutors, and caregivers, but he never truly spent time with him. He had told himself he was doing it all for Ethan, but deep down, he knew he was afraid. Afraid of facing his pain. Afraid of failing as a father. When Daniel entered the library, he expected to see a normal reading session, maybe even something dull. But what he saw surprised him completely. Emma was sitting on the carpet, surrounded by children, with Ethan right in front of her. She wasn't just reading, she was performing. Her voice changed with every character, soft for the kind princess, deep for the dragon, and high-pitched for the funny sidekick. The children laughed and clapped. Ethan's face lit up with pure joy. Daniel felt something stir inside him. He stood quietly, almost afraid to move, as he watched his son giggle at every funny line. He hadn't heard that sound in so long. Ethan's laughter filled the air like music, and Daniel realized how much he had missed it. He looked at Emma. Her smile was kind, her eyes full of warmth. She wasn't pretending or trying to impress anyone. She truly cared. Every time Ethan tried to speak or pointed a picture, She paused patiently, waiting for him, never rushing. For the next half hour, Daniel stood frozen near the bookshelf, listening. The story was about a boy who found courage by believing in himself. It wasn't a grand story, but the way Emma told it made it feel like magic. The children were completely lost in the world she created. When she reached the final page, she closed the book slowly and said, "Sometimes bravery isn't about fighting dragons. Sometimes it's about smiling, even when life is hard." Ethan clapped loudly, and Daniel had to blink quickly to stop the tears that suddenly filled his eyes. After the session, the children ran to pick new books. Emma helped Ethan choose one, her voice gentle and encouraging. Daniel finally stepped forward, clearing his throat softly. Emma turned, surprised. "Oh, hello," she said politely. "Can I help you?" Daniel gave a small smile. "I'm Ethan's father." For a moment, Emma froze. She had heard about him, of course. Everyone had. But seeing him in person was different. He didn't look like the cold, proud billionaire people described. He looked tired, like someone carrying too many heavy thoughts. "It's nice to meet you," she said kindly. "Ethan is such a wonderful boy. We love having him here." Daniel looked at his son, who was still happily flipping through a picture book. "He talks about you all the time," he admitted. "I wanted to see for myself what he loves so much about this place." Emma smiled softly. "He loves stories. They give him wings." Daniel nodded, his eyes softening. "Yes, I can see that now." He paused, searching for the right words. "Thank you." "For what you do for him?" "It's nothing, really," Emma said, shaking her head. "He makes my Wednesdays special." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the rain outside filled the silence. Daniel looked around the small library, the worn bookshelves, the old reading chairs, the smell of paper and ink. It was simple, but there was something beautiful about it. Something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. He sat down on a nearby chair, for the first time, stayed for the entire reading session. He watched how Emma interacted with the children, how she encouraged them to dream, how she listened to every word they said. When Ethan tried to read a few words himself, she leaned closer and whispered, "Take your time. You can do it." Daniel watched as his son slowly sounded out each word, his small voice trembling but determined. When Ethan finally finished the sentence, the other children clapped. Emma gave him a proud smile. "See? You're just like the brave heroes we read about." Daniel felt something shift inside his chest. He had spent years trying to buy happiness with money, toys, technology, and comfort. But this woman, with her gentle words and old books, had given his son something priceless: confidence and joy. When the hour ended, Emma helped Ethan pack his things. Daniel walked up and offered to carry the bag, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan looked up at his father and smiled widely. "Did you like the story, Dad?" he asked. Daniel crouched beside him. "I loved it," he said softly, "especially because I got to hear it with you." Emma felt her throat tighten at the sight. She could sense the love between them, even if it had been buried under years of silence. As the car drove away, Daniel looked back through the rain-streaked window and saw Emma waving goodbye. Something inside him told him this wouldn't be his last visit that night. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. He sat in his quiet mansion, staring at the city lights from his office window. For years, he had built everything around success numbers, profits, power. But none of it compared to that one simple moment when he saw his son laugh. He realized he had been living a life full of noise but empty of meaning. He remembered Emma's words. Stories give him wings. Maybe she was right. Maybe stories could heal things that money couldn't. And maybe, just maybe, he had been too blind to see that until now. The rain finally stopped outside. The city was quiet. Daniel made a silent promise to himself to be there next Wednesday, and the one after that. Not as a billionaire, not as a businessman, but as a father. Because today, in that small-town library, he had seen something far more powerful than wealth. He had seen love in its simplest, purest form, and it had changed him. The following Wednesday came with soft sunlight and a light breeze. The smell of blooming flowers filled the air outside the library, and the birds sang from the trees nearby. Inside, Emma was preparing for story time, as always. She arranged the colorful cushions and opened a new picture book on the table. She didn't know that this day was going to be a little different. When the black car stopped in front of the library, she expected to see only Ethan and his driver. But to her surprise, Daniel Wallace stepped out of the car with his son. He wasn't wearing his usual formal suit. Instead, he had on a simple sweater and jeans. He looked more relaxed, though still a bit unsure. Ethan smiled proudly, as if happy to show his father his favorite place in the world. "Good morning, Miss Emma," Ethan called out as the automatic doors opened. Emma looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Ethan, and hello, Mr. Wallace. Nice to see you again." Daniel nodded politely. "Please call me Daniel. I hope it's all right if I stay again." "Of course," Emma said kindly. "We're happy to have you." Daniel took a seat in the back, but this time he didn't stand silently like before. He listened closely as Emma began to read a story about a little explorer who searched for hidden treasure. Her voice rose and fell with emotion, filling the room with warmth. The children sat quietly, eyes wide with wonder. Ethan leaned forward, completely lost in the tale, and every time he laughed, Daniel's heart grew lighter. After the story, Emma asked the children to draw their favorite parts. Ethan tried his best, holding the crayon carefully in his small hand. His lines weren't perfect, but his joy was. Daniel crouched beside him and helped him color the sky blue. Emma watched from across the room, a small smile forming on her lips. She could see something changing between them. The space that once felt distant now felt full of love and laughter. When the session ended, most of the children left with their parents, but Daniel stayed behind, helping Ethan pick new books. After a while, he turned to Emma and said, "Would you like to have coffee? There's something I'd like to ask you." Emma hesitated for a second, surprised by the invitation, but then nodded. "Sure, I'd like that." They walked to the small cafe near the library, while Ethan sat beside them, busy with his new book. The cafe smelled of fresh bread and cinnamon. Daniel stirred his coffee thoughtfully before speaking. "You've done something for my son that no doctor or therapist could do," he said quietly. "You've given him joy and confidence. I see it every time he smiles now." Emma looked down, feeling shy. "I just read him stories. That's all," Daniel said gently, shaking his head. "It's more than that. You see him. You treat him like every other child. You don't pity him. You believe in him." Emma smiled softly. "I believe every child deserves that. My mother used to say books can open hearts as easily as they open minds." She wanted to start a literacy center for children, especially those who struggle or have special needs. She never got the chance before she passed away. Daniel listened carefully. "That's a beautiful dream," he said. "Why didn't you start it yourself?" Emma gave a small laugh. "Dreams are easy. Money isn't. I live a simple life, and the library already takes up most of my time. But sometimes, when I see kids like Ethan, I imagine what it would be like if there was a place made just for them, a space where stories, learning, and kindness all came together." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. He was deep in thought. Then he looked at her and said quietly, "Maybe some dreams shouldn't stay dreams." Emma didn't quite understand what he meant, but there was something in his tone, a quiet promise she couldn't name. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Ethan came to the library regularly. Every time, Daniel stayed longer. Sometimes he helped Emma arrange the books or read along with the children. The other kids began to like him too, calling him Mr. Daniel. A once distant billionaire had slowly become a familiar face. He began to see life differently through laughter, stories, and his son's shining eyes. Emma noticed how much more relaxed Daniel had become. He didn't check his phone as much anymore, didn't seem distracted by work. Instead, he asked about the children's favorite books and even shared stories from his own childhood. She saw a side of him the world probably never did, a father rediscovering the beauty of simplicity. One afternoon, after story time, Ethan fell asleep on the couch, his small hand still clutching a book. Daniel and Emma sat nearby, speaking in soft voices. "He loves coming here," Daniel said quietly. It's like this place gives him something I never could. It's not about what you couldn't give, Emma replied gently. You're giving him what matters most, now your time. That's something no one can buy. Daniel looked at her with thoughtful eyes. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is, she said. Sometimes love just needs space to breathe. Daniel smiled for the first time that day, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. He had spent years building walls around himself, but somehow, this woman with her soft voice and quiet strength was breaking them down without even trying, as the sun set outside. Golden light filled the library. Emma picked up a book and placed it back on the shelf. Daniel watched her, realizing how much he admired her kindness, her patience, her belief in small things. She didn't chase fame or wealth, yet she had something far greater, purpose. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Emma had said, the dream of a literacy center for children like Ethan. He imagined a building full of books, laughter, and learning. He imagined children who couldn't walk or speak easily, finding happiness in stories, just like his son. And he imagined Emma there, smiling, reading, guiding them. He thought about his own life. All the money he had made, all the companies he had built. None of it had ever made him feel what he felt. Now, quiet kind of peace. Maybe this was what his wealth was truly meant for. Not for more business, but for something real. Something that mattered. The next morning, Daniel called his assistant and said, I want to start something new. Something meaningful. His assistant was confused. What kind of project, sir? Daniel smiled faintly. A place for children. For stories. For hope. Didn't explain further, but in his heart he already knew what he wanted to do. Emma's dream would no longer just be words. It would become reality. Over the next few days, Daniel started making quiet plans. He visited local properties, spoke to architects, and made donations under a different name. He wanted it to be a surprise. Every evening when Ethan talked about story time, Daniel felt even more sure that he was doing the right thing. Emma had no idea what was happening. She continued her days as usual, reading to children, organizing shelves, greeting Ethan and his father with her warm smile. But something in the air had changed. There was a quiet excitement building, something big on the horizon. She didn't know that soon. Her life and the lives of many children was about to change forever. All because one man had finally learned that true happiness begins with kindness. It was a bright Friday morning, and the town was buzzing with quiet excitement. People who walked past the library noticed unusual activity flowers were being arranged. Cameras quietly set up, and even the mayor's car parked nearby. Emma Brooks arrived at the library, humming softly as usual, ready for story time. But something felt different in the air. She carried a small stack of books and noticed a strange mix of curiosity and anticipation around her. When she stepped inside, Emma's eyes widened in surprise. The library had been decorated with fresh flowers, colorful banners, and even balloons. The mayor greeted her with a warm handshake, and a few reporters quietly prepared their cameras. In the center of it all stood Daniel Wallace, looking more at ease than she had ever seen him. He gave her a kind smile. "Good morning, Emma," he said softly. "I hope you don't mind all the attention today." Emma's heart raced. She had no idea what was happening. "I don't understand." She stayed. Daniel motioned for her to follow him outside. Ethan rolled along happily, holding her hand as if he were showing her the way. Once they stepped out, Daniel began to speak, his voice calm but firm. "Emma, you have done something extraordinary. For weeks I have watched you bring joy, confidence, and hope to children who need it most. You have given my son something that cannot be measured: happiness, courage, and love. And now, I want to make sure the world sees what you've been doing too." Emma blinked in shock. She couldn't imagine what he meant. Daniel continued, "Today, I am announcing the creation of the Brooks Literacy and Learning Center named in your honor. This will be a place where children, especially those with special needs, can come learn and experience the magic of stories, just as Ethan has. You will be the director. You will guide this center and help every child discover their courage and imagination." Emma's mouth opened, but no words came out. She shook her head in disbelief. I can't. This is too much," she whispered. It's not too much, Daniel said softly. It's exactly right. You've earned this. Your work, your heart, your dedication. This is how we honor it. And I want you to have the resources to make it bigger, better, and reach as many children as possible. At that moment, the mayor stepped forward. Emma Brooks, you have touched our community in ways we can hardly describe. Today, we celebrate not just your work, but the power of kindness and love. The town is proud of you, and we are proud to support this new center. Reporters began to snap pictures, and Emma felt her cheeks flush. She looked at Daniel, her eyes wide. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Daniel knelt beside Ethan, who was now sitting in his wheelchair, and ruffled his hair. Because you have changed my life, he said. You've reminded me what really matters. And I want to make sure your dreams of children like you come true. I could barely breathe. She felt tears pricking her eyes. She had always believed that small acts of kindness mattered, but she never imagined they could lead to something this extraordinary. She had spent years working quietly, helping children one by one, never thinking anyone would notice. Yet here she was being honored in a way she had never expected. Daniel handed her a sealed envelope. This contains the plans, funding, and everything you need to start the center. I want you to have complete freedom to create it as you imagine. The town, the resources, and the support are all yours. Emma opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were letters, blueprints, and checks enough to build a center that could serve hundreds of children. She couldn't speak. Instead, she simply hugged Daniel tightly, feeling gratitude and disbelief all at once. Ethan clapped his small hands and laughed. It's my library. It's ours, he shouted, his joy spreading to everyone around him. The reporters smiled at the scene, capturing the moment, a little boy laughing, a humble librarian crying, and a billionaire father finally showing his heart. Over the next few hours, Emma spoke to the press, though she struggled to find the right words. I never imagined this could happen, she said softly. I just love reading to children. I believe every story can give a child courage and hope. I hope this center can give that to many more children. Daniel watched her, proud not because of her recognition, but because he had helped someone else's dream become reality. For him, the center wasn't just a gift to Emmett, it was a promise to himself and to Ethan, a promise to value time, kindness, and love over money, business, and success. As the day progressed, Emma began to walk through the plans and blueprints with architects and city planners. She spoke about classrooms, reading corners, therapy rooms, and areas for children to play and imagine. Every detail mattered to her. Daniel stood nearby, quietly taking notes and listening. He didn't interfere. He simply wanted to see Emma's vision come alive. By late afternoon, the first steps of the Brooks Literacy and Learning Center were already taking shape. Emma was exhilarated and overwhelmed at the same time. She had dreamed quietly, never expecting her life to change so dramatically, yet here she was, with the means to touch hundreds of children's lives. Ethan, now sitting with a pile of books, looked up at Emma. Will you read to me here too? He asked eagerly. Emma knelt beside him. Of course, Ethan. Every day if you want. Daniel smiled, a quiet satisfaction filling his chest. He had witnessed firsthand the power of kindness, patience, and genuine care. A simple librarian reading to a child had inspired him to do something meaningful, not for fame or recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. As the sun set behind the town, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Emma stood outside the library, still holding Ethan's hand. She looked at Daniel and whispered, I don't know how to thank you. Daniel shook his head, smiling softly. No thanks are necessary. You changed my life first. This is just the beginning for you, for Ethan, and for every child who will step into this center. That evening, as Emma returned home, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Her simple act of reading stories had sparked something much bigger than she had ever imagined. She felt a mix of joy, disbelief, and hope. The dreams she had long held close to her heart were finally coming to life. And it was all because someone had seen her work and believed in it, Daniel. meanwhile, sat quietly in his office that night. Looking at pictures of Ethan laughing during story time, he realized that life wasn't measured by wealth or power, but by moments like these, moments of genuine connection, love, and kindness. He had spent so long chasing success and forgotten what truly mattered, but now he had been reminded. And he was determined not to forget again. The Brooks Literacy and Learning Center wasn't just a building or a project. It was a promise, a gift, and a testament to the power of human compassion. And it all started with a little boy in a wheelchair, a humble librarian, and a father finally willing to see as the stars began to appear in the night sky. Emma sat quietly, holding a notebook filled with ideas for the center. She whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning. There are so many children out there waiting for stories, waiting for hope." And somewhere across town, Daniel knew the same thing sometimes. The simplest acts of kindness could change lives forever. The Brooks Literacy and Learning Center opened on a crisp autumn morning, and the entire town seemed to gather in excitement. Children ran along the newly paved pathways, their laughter echoing through the air like music. The building itself was bright and welcoming, painted in soft pastel colors. With wide windows that let sunlight pour into every room, banners hung above the entrance, welcoming children and families from all around. Emma Brooks stood at the front, holding Ethan's small hand, her heart racing with anticipation and happiness. Ethan's wheelchair rolled eagerly along the ramp, and his eyes widened at the sight of the colorful classrooms, reading corners, and playful spaces designed especially for children with special needs. He reached for Emma's hand and whispered, "It's amazing. It's really ours." Emma smiled and squeezed his hand. "It's all for you, Ethan, and for every child who dreams of a place like this." Daniel Wallace followed behind them, watching quietly. He didn't need the applause or the recognition. He only needed to see the children's smiles, the joy in his son's eyes, and the way Emma's face lit up with purpose and pride. For him, the opening of the center was more than an event. It was a moment of transformation. Not just for the town or for the children, but for himself. He had spent years chasing success, but today, he felt something far more valuable. Meaning, the ribbon-cutting ceremony began. The mayor stepped forward, praising Emma's dedication and acknowledging Daniel's generosity. When the ribbon was finally cut, children poured into the center, exploring every corner with wonder. Laughter, chatter, and excitement filled the air. Emma guided them gently, helping a child in a wheelchair reach a low bookshelf, kneeling beside another child to read a picture book, and laughing softly at their wide-eyed amazement. Daniel watched his son carefully. Ethan immediately made friends with other children, sharing his toys and stories, completely at ease in this new world. For the first time, Daniel realized that his wealth alone could never have created such a moment of happiness. It was the combination of love, kindness, and attention that truly mattered. And Emma had given all of that quietly, patiently, and without expectation. Over the next few hours, parents came forward to thank Emma. They spoke of how she had made a difference in their children's lives, how she had inspired courage and confidence, and how her gentle guidance had changed the way their children saw the world. Emma felt a warmth she had never experienced before. She had always loved helping children, but the recognition, the ability to make a lasting impact was beyond anything she had imagined. Daniel stepped closer to Emma, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You've done something incredible, Emma. You didn't just help my son, you've helped every child who comes here. You've changed lives, including mine." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I never expected any of this," she whispered. "I just wanted to read to children to make them smile." Daniel smiled softly. "And in doing so, you reminded me of what really matters in life. I was so busy with work that I forgot how to be a father. But watching you with Ethan, it's opened my eyes. I want to be a better dad and a better person." Ethan, overhearing part of the conversation, clapped his hands. "Dad, can we read here every day?" Daniel laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "Yes, we can. Every day." Throughout the day, Emma guided volunteers, teachers, and staff, showing them how to create an environment full of learning, creativity, and love. She explained the importance of patience, of listening to children, of celebrating small victories. Children with special needs, who had often been overlooked in other schools, were now the focus. For them, this was not just a building, it was a sanctuary. It's a place where they could grow, explore, and dream freely. As the weeks went by, the center flourished. Children attended therapy sessions, participated in story clubs, and learned to read in ways that suited them best. Ethan thrived, growing more confident and expressive with each passing day. Daniel, who now visited regularly, discovered the joy of simply spending time with his son. Reading together, playing games, and sharing laughter. The once distant father and son bond had begun to flourish into something deep, meaningful, and unbreakable. Emma watched it all quietly, feeling a sense of fulfillment she had never known. Her life, once small and ordinary, was now full of purpose and meaning. She saw children learning to believe in themselves, discovering new interests, and developing the courage to face challenges. And she saw Ethan smiling freely, glowing with the joy of being understood and loved. One evening, after the center had closed, Emma sat at her desk, flipping through notes and plans for the next week. Daniel quietly entered the room, holding 2 cups of tea. "You're still working," he said with a smile. "I have to," Emma replied. "There's always something to improve, something new to plan. Every child deserves the best." Daniel handed her a cup. "You've done more than I could ever imagine. You've changed so many lives, including mine. And you've shown me the power of kindness." Emma looked at him, feeling a deep gratitude. "I never thought that reading stories could lead to all this," she said softly. Daniel shook his head. "It's not just reading stories. It's how you care, how you see children as people, not problems. That's what makes the difference." The night grew quiet outside. The library lights dimmed, but the glow of the center lingered in Emma's heart. She knew that this was just the beginning. The Brooks Literacy and Learning Center would continue to grow, touching countless lives, inspiring countless dreams. And it all started with a small act of love: a librarian reading to a child in a wheelchair. Daniel often thought back to the first day he had watched Emma read to Ethan. He remembered the laughter, the focus, the care she gave so freely, and he knew that moment had changed everything. It had reminded him of life's true purpose, the importance of connection, and the power of compassion. He had wealth, power, and success, but now he also had something far more precious: love, joy, and a family that was finally complete. In the months that followed, the center became a symbol of hope. Children who had once struggled to read, speak, or even make friends found new confidence. Families discovered a place where their children were celebrated, nurtured, and encouraged to grow. And Emma, once a quiet librarian, became a guiding light for her community, reminder that small acts of kindness can ripple outward in unimaginable ways. On a particularly quiet afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the center, Emma sat reading to a small group of children. Ethan sat beside her, occasionally glancing up at his father, who watched from the back, smiling. Daniel whispered to a nearby volunteer, "This is what life should be about: seeing joy, giving love, and building something that lasts." Emma's voice carried softly through the room, filling the air with warmth. "And remember," she said to the children, "every story you read, every dream you chase, makes you stronger, and you can share that strength with others." Daniel looked around at the room filled with children, laughing, learning, and exploring. And he realized that Emma's simple act of reading had done more than help one child. It had transformed an entire community. And in the process, it had transformed him as the sun set outside. Painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, the laughter and chatter continued inside. The Brooks Literacy and Learning Center was no longer just a building. It was a living testament to love, kindness, and hope. Emma, Ethan, and Daniel sat together, sharing stories, dreams, and plans for the future. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt truly at peace, knowing that real wealth was measured not in money, but in the joy and love we give to others. The story had come full circle. What began as a quiet library, a humble librarian, and a little boy in a wheelchair had grown into a beacon of hope for countless children. And it all started with someone who cared enough to read, listen, and believe. That small act of kindness had changed lives forever, proving that sometimes the simplest things in life are the most powerful.